All right, we'll start the August business session of the Board of Education. First item on the agenda is President's Report. All the board members are in attendance. And our next board meetings are Wednesday, September 18th and Wednesday, October 9th. And we want to set November, it would be November 13th.
Yeah, there will be a, we'll have to do our budget session too at the end of October, so, just so that you know that.
All right, moving on to administrative reports. Item A, preview 1920 budget and strategic planning post-referendum. Five.
So I did just do a short presentation, so I'll flip the light off here so you can see that. So with the referendum and the state budget both, the good news on the state budget was the state did account for about $175, well this year it'll be $175 more per pupil in the revenue limit calculation, and about $100 more in our per pupil categorical aid. So it's an overall budget picture at the moment. You know, the budget, we still have some items that are some unknowns. When you look at the budget and its effect, say, on the taxpayers, we don't have our final equalized value, but at least the published municipal equalized values are trending quite a bit higher than we predicted when we went through the referendum process this last year. I believe in the village of Port Edwards, the municipal equalized value for the village is about 6% higher. The kicker where it becomes difficult for the district to calculate that at the moment until we get a number from the Department of Public Instruction is, there's some things like, we're only part of Seneca, we're only part of Saratoga, we're only part of the town of Port Edwards. So we can do some estimations there as to what that's going to do in equalized value. But until we get that final number, you know, it is possible that our mill rate could be slightly lower than what we had predicted during the referendum process. And we tried to be conservative in the referendum process. Probably something interesting in the state budget that happened though was they gave money to revenue limit, which actually works against us on our mill rate for our taxpayers, or our property tax rate, because that goes to property taxes. The good thing though is if our value went higher, that offsets at least the mill rate and could help us out there. So right now it's looking positive that way. In the total budget, yeah, let's see. Uh-oh, might have to have you do this, Lisa. Or Neil. There we go. I bet you it's going to work now. Okay, I think I have to just get it off sleep mode. So our referendum priorities were close the deficit, update curriculum, building improvements, and school vehicle upgrade. So our number one priority, close the deficit. So with the state budget and the help of the referendum, we would predict that we're able to close this deficit now moving out for the next few years. That might, you know, we may need to tweak our budget numbers each year on certain items, but you'll see how that's probably possible as we discuss this. Some of the things we need to do though, we need to monitor our revenues and potential extra sources of revenue. So that's continuing to look at things if there's grant money available for different projects. That can get onerous at times, so we obviously want to make sure that if we do go for grants, that it's not something that's putting a lot more work on us than it is worth doing, because there are times when that happens. But again, continuing to look for those items. And again, monitoring that revenue so that we're making sure that the revenue stream is staying solid. Monitoring our expenditures, looking for ways to be efficient with the expenditures and get the most out of our dollars. One thing that Lisa and I worked on the last couple of years, just to give you an efficiency item, is we now buy our natural gas. We try to shop the natural gas now for the best gas rate versus at the best time of year versus just being on the Alliant budget cycle. So we actually work with a third party now We actually don't purchase or not aligned, I should say, We Energies. We don't purchase our gas directly from We Energies any longer. There's trend lines that we look at to try to buy gas when it is cheaper, and then we also go back and look at what We Energies rates are, because of course we don't want to get to a point where that's not saving us dollars. And again, is it possible we could eliminate short-term borrowing? Possibly next year, but again, we need to do some work at looking at the low points in our revenue stream. We know that this November will be a low point. The most state aid gets paid to us in June, and our taxes come in January and December. So by the time you get to November, the revenue stream is quite small at that point. So, but there are some things maybe we look at project-wise or expenditure-wise that we can really try to hone that in so that we're not, so that we can work our way out of short-term borrowing. So, curriculum update, priority number 2. We've had no real major K-12 full area curriculum updates in the last 5 years. We have had some enhancements. For instance, we did some elementary reading at the K-1-2 with the Super Kids program, but that was really focused at K-1-2. But we haven't had, we know we're far behind on our science curriculum in terms of an update cycle. We know that social studies is behind. We know we need to do some work in English language arts and reading. Our last full big scale curriculum update was mathematics. And there are some math things we need to do along the way. What we lack, since we got to the point where the budget was so small, we lacked the resources to really continue to affect